As much as I want to stand on the existing protocol, I guess I must acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, the permanent representative of the ECOWAS president to Ghana, and most importantly, Professor Kwame Karikari. I have fond memories of working with Prof, and I think my remarks basically will be centered on some technicalities that I think we should take away as it concerns journalism practice in the region. I also want to take time to recognize Professor Prempre as well, and Mr. Suleiman Abraham, a very good friend, brother, whom I've worked with for so many years, and I do appreciate his linkages and his support with WADEMOS and the entire staff of MFWA, from which I'm an external staff by co-option. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. And indeed, from the technical sense of it, I would speak and allow the special rep to give a very much more detailed, holistic statement with regards to ECOWAS concerns and the benefit ECOWAS seeks to achieve from our engagement in the next 2 days. I really want to center my remark around 5 key concerns. The first, I think, that it concerns journalism. I want to look at how positive and negative citizens' journalism has been on media and democracy. I also want to take time to consider the creation of new echoes of media spaces, how it has impacted on the media defending democracy itself. And I think it's also necessary to look at digital media because digital media has so much impacted on crisis management that I think it's wise for us to look at it holistically. And if we don't look at it holistically, the rest of the world will move ahead of us. I was excited when I heard somebody introduce herself as a defense security analyst. It's good for us because cybersecurity is something that the rest of the world has gone ahead with, and we seem to be behind in Africa. And the impact is getting so much at us that we are not taking that deep contextual introspective look on cybersecurity and how it penetrates into the media space as well. Then finally, I would just want to make a remark on a policy document that Professor Kwame Karikari took time to work with us at the ECOWAS to develop. And I really feel excited and gratifying to God to sit by him today and speak and tell him that we need to look at this policy document. It's the ECOWAS policy on norms and standards for media in promoting peace and security. I think it's high time we look at this policy document from the perspective of what we do today with regards to cyber security, with regards to digital media space. Indeed, Media Foundation sets a lot of firsts for me. And I think the first I would say in this regard is what we need to look at in terms of the retrogression of democratic processes in our region, and also how we can counter-evaluate this within the context of rule of law, promotion of human rights, and inclusivity in participatory governance processes, but specifically how it impacts on the media. So let me make my first remark on the positives and negatives of citizens' journalism on the role of media in enhancing democratic practice. Today in our region, the effect of citizen journalism, as positive as it is, has opened up the space for conventional media practitioners, as well as expanded citizens journalists, to more or less infiltrate the media space and create questions that have raised concerns on how we look at democracy and how we define the media's role in democracy. In the onset in the region, you had the conventional and mainstream media properly regulated and managing information as they ought to. But today, with the inroad of citizens journalism, a lot of setback has come into the space. And political actors have chosen to use citizens journalism from the back end to promote crisis that even democracy itself is finding it very difficult to manage. And because it's within the context of legitimacy of their role, you can't really question it. And there's been a lot of concerns on how do you regulate citizens' journalism. Regulation in terms of positive attributes of what you gain from citizen journalism contribution with regards to expansion of the space and creating right and freedom of expression to every other individual community citizens. But I'm hoping that by the time we come through with our conversations here, we would examine how citizens journalism have gotten an inroad into mainstream journalism. You would see that there's a conflict of interest among those who are media practitioners within mainstream media who really want to project what is positive, but because at times over-regulation by states and polarity in terms of the influence of the government on the day on public media, it has reached a stage where they too themselves go into the platform of embracing citizens journalism and putting out messages there that they would second from the conventional media space. I think we ought to manage this. If you look at what is happening in our region, there is a lot of stimulations from the citizen journalism space into the mainstream media. And once that conversation becomes very topical, and if you watch closely the mainstream media, they take time to even project the digital media space in their mainstream space. And in doing that, they amplify some of the issues you do not really expect them to amplify because some of them might not be verifiable facts. So I think we need to take a second look on how we balance the positives and negatives of citizens journalism on democracy itself. I think in the region, we are not doing too well in terms of how we balance these positives and negatives. And I want to employ experts, media practitioners, and very, very respectable civil society outfits who are here to work with us at the ECOWAS level to come up with the strategic points that we can utilize to see how best we can manage the impact of citizen journalism on democracy. I think, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the other remark I would want to lay emphasis on has to do with the creation of new echo chambers and its impact on the democratic space, and how it sort of negates the defending of democracy itself. If you look at how we open up new echo chambers, anybody with a click of the mouse can decide to open a new echo chamber space. And when you get the required followership, you can start feeding it with the kind of information you want to feed in there. And most of the time, the content development is very, very subjective. It's not a content development that weighs the balance of the respect for rule of law, respect for other citizens' rights to their integrity, and respect for government institutional agencies, ministries, and department integrity. But yet, you see these new echoes that have been opened up being utilized in such a way that it negates all essence of rule of law and substantive protection of government institutions. In some advanced democracies, you would see where the highest authority at the highest level of government tweeted so much that the entire world could compute the numbers of tweets. And the echoes that this tweet got across to the rest of the world even almost negated. Like I said earlier, I was excited to know that there's an intelligence analyst and journalist here in here with us. At that time, in that particular space, even those who wanted to balance the civility in the intelligence space, they were forced to be cautioned because tweets were sent out to them as well. So I really want to say it will be necessary for us to see how best we can get the concerns of protecting human rights integrity and integrity of rule of law institutions and member state government authorities, ministers and departments, agencies' integrity in such a way that what the public media does, the mainstream media does, those who practice citizens journalism should have a way of understanding that if you set up a group, you should not set it up with a negative intention of negating the peace of the polity and creating stability within the country's space. I think in this instance it would be wise to look at the political class and political parties on how they create eco-media spaces. And I think as journalists, you should re-emphasize to them when certain eco-media spaces are being created, you should watch out and look at the intentions and the back-end managers of these eco-media spaces. The last but not the least, I would want to make a remark on is on the balancing of freedom of expression with the rule of law and the protection of human rights. I am really excited at what WADAMOS has set out itself to do. And in planning this, WADAMOS and Media Foundation for West Africa, in the last 2 days, like Stule did say, I've had sleepless nights, and we're trying to come up with a new unit under the division I work with to manage concerns around the new media space, especially the digital media, and looking at how we can foster some sense of balance in terms of regulation. If you agree with me, conventional mainstream media, television, radio, they are properly regulated. And if they get out of hand, they understand, not necessarily sanctions, what the implications would be. So of late, we try to look at how we can manage that. Corruption is a key concern to us at the ECOWAS level, but what we had looked at is that corruption borders on transparency and accountability. So we thought it wise. It's still postulation, and we are hoping that going forward, ECOWAS might specifically start looking at transparency and the civic space. So in looking at the civic space, the regional bodies such as the WADAMOS of this world, media foundations of this world, WANEPs of this world, the RADOs of this world, the Social Watch of this world, they would all come together and work with us in looking at how we balance accountability and transparency in the civic space. The civic space is something I believe we need to consider in all of our conversation here. It's very key for us to look at how political actors and media, as the fourth estate of the realm, goes in there. I think the media, in its own efforts, should take time to look at how it manages its digital content. There are times that obscene posts come up in their digital space. And to regulate this, they give excuses that they're running a profile on what has been posted in the digital space. And I think for conventional media, re-echoing what is negative in the digital space is not too positive, because you are, as it seems today, the last resort for the protection of human rights and integrity of the individual citizen, and also institutional integrity of the bodies that form up democratic ethos for our region. If we don't manage these three arms of bodies who support democratic ethos in the region, what we'll find out is that the capture of democracy, like we've all been complaining, will be made perfect through the media space. And I think the media should come out and address the concerns that has stimulated and has been used as a huge tool for galvanizing and formation of new ethos chambers that people work with today. So I want to say, and I want to believe that at the end of these two-day engagements, we would come out with very ripe strategic framework that ECOWAS can borrow from, that would enhance the respect for rule of law, enhance the protection of human rights, look at a way of making citizens' involvement in democracy much more accountable. Content development in the digital media space should be looked at. And I think the cyber framework policy that ECOWAS has, I would want to advise the media practitioners here and media consultants and experts here should take a second look at it. It's a policy document, but I think the visibility for that document has not been given it enough space for it to ventilate. So I think if we take time to look at that policy, it will help us a great deal. Because where contents are managed and we don't understand where the back ends are coming, it becomes a challenge. And I will just speak to this very quick example. If you look at participatory governance processes today in the region, nobody knows who managed the content of the software that we use to deploy towards supporting participatory governance processes. And whenever the judiciary calls for it to be tendered in court, you would find out that those who are behind the back ends, they decline to appear before any court and to give you their data to support what the court wants to make a ruling on. I think this is something we need to galvanize experts and devoted national commitment citizens who are very committed to the state and the cause of the region to work around and develop strategic back-end digital materials that our participatory governance agencies can work with. So I want to say this is very key, and in developing it, they must take cognizance into the protection of human rights. Lastly, I think it would be wise to just mention some remarks on how you manage, use the digital media to manage crisis in the region. This is a major challenge we have now. If you try to manage it through the digital space, the approaches has always been very diverse. When it becomes so painful for the government of the day, the information ministers would come up with pronouncements that would almost seem as if they want to create a total blackout on the social media space. And I think this is not so healthy. Engagement with the media and sending out rebuttals that are positives will be very necessary in this regard. So I want to suggest that, especially if you look at what is happening in 3 transitional states, I want to believe the actors and the media practitioners who are from these 3 transitional states, we expect a lot from you. We expect you to create visibilities on the issues happening in these 3 transitional states. And we believe that ECOWAS' desire to have them revert back to democracy is to have them revert back to standard orders and constructive engagement that promotes rule of law and enhancing citizens' value to information and management and using of information. So I want to say on a final note that I really look forward to how these engagements in the next 2 days would profile solutions and advice on how we can enhance the policy document I mentioned earlier to you, that Professor Kwame Karikari worked closely with us, as Media Foundation as a whole, worked closely with us to develop the ECOWAS norms and standards for media promotion of peace and security in West Africa. We really look forward to the outcomes you will bring out here and look at how we can tease out some outcomes and some policy notes that would help us understand the dynamic of how we can integrate digital media as a tool for promoting peace and security in the ECOWAS region. I do want to once again thank the organizers, Media Foundation for West Africa, and all of the good friends and brothers who work for Media Foundation for West Africa. My good sister Abigail, thanks for such an initiative, and we want to believe that Wadamos should have a specific interest group that will promote digital media and make an oversight responsibility on digital media something that our parliaments can look at and our parliament can review, so that we don't have that power just around a communications or information minister. I thank the organizers and I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to make these remarks to you. Thank you so much.